Welcome to today's live with me, Maike, and my special guest, Don Zillioux from the US. So, we're expecting quite an interesting and diverse and international crowd tonight. And if you're not familiar with the LinkedIn Live concept, this is supposed to be something fun and something interactive where you can comment, where you can also share your ideas and your thoughts. And this is why I also like to highly encourage you to write in the comment, use the field, tell us where you're from, where you're tuning in from, maybe your expectations or what kind of questions you're already having. And in case you're wondering why I'm stalling around a bit, I'm actually waiting for the live stream to be live on all platforms because, of course, I do not want you to miss anything of today's talk about why organizations should be driven by results and outputs. And in order to discuss this really cool topic, I have invited a guest who is an absolute expert in the area. So, first comments are coming in. Ooh, okay. So, Lily is joining from the office. This is Frankfurt downtown. So, thank you for joining tonight. I had the pleasure to get to know Don Zillioux and his business partner, Arthur Nathan, during the pandemic, actually. And me and my business partner, Lily, were live on a weekly basis in the tiny classroom trainings. So I've gotten to know Don a bit, and he's an absolute expert in so many areas. And I was really wondering, what kind of topic, what kind of talk would be super interesting also for the community. And he's written a book about results and what results-focused organization can and should do. So I thought this is the perfect topic for our life, and we're going to get to it to any minute. My name is Maike Benner. I'm the co-founder of Malish, and I help companies and entrepreneurs, individuals, to work on their business, start their business, elevate their business to the next level. And I'm doing this in a way you could say that I help entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, sidepreneurs, all kind of ships, so to say, to sail off to their business success. But enough about me. Let's start into the topic of today. And let me introduce my guest, Don Zillioux. So Don is the founder, CEO, and also chief scientist of strategic development worldwide. He's founding partner of SDW companies, and he's a co-founder of Tiny Classroom Training Series. He has more than 20 years of experience in various fields, consulting companies worldwide. Among them are also the German-based KSF, you might be familiar with, various casinos and resorts, Mexican Airlines, just to name a few. And Don is recognized as a thought leader, a practice leader, an effective change management expert. Buzzwords like planning change, organizational development, managerial effectiveness, sustainable performance, just to name a few of the words, are really the expertise of Don Zillioux. He has not only written this book, but many, many others, and he has constructed, written, developed many assessment training programs for companies also. So it is my pleasure and honor to now welcome Don to this talk. Hello and good evening from Germany to, I think, Taos, New Mexico, I suppose.
In Taos, New Mexico. So good morning to you, Mikey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for being here and for taking the time. And as I said, I was thrilled for some time to get you on my show, and now we finally managed. And it's great to have you with us. Thank you.
Well, now that you're done embarrassing me with that introduction, let's see where we can go.
Yeah. So why don't we start out slow and with a, let's say, a topic
Okay.
that is very about, not maybe business directly, but also about, intercultural exchange and just, collaboration, and also, thinking past the pandemic where we actually will be able to interact and interchange. And we're doing, I think, a great job at doing it online, but the world will be a much better place once we are able to get out there and travel a bit more. And we
Certainly.
sometimes joke, don't we, about your stay in Germany, putting asterisks and obelix. I know you have a constant craving for German food.
I do. I do.
So,
And
so how about we start off with, why did you come to Germany in the first place, and what did it give to you? What are your takeaways, also business wise, of living in a culture that is probably totally different, and also working with companies that are probably also much diverse or different from the US ones?
wow, there's lots of questions there. First, I want to go back to your original introduction to our call today and referencing Karl May novels and books, And so when I first went to Germany, I was in the Army. I was a young Army officer, having come back from Vietnam. And when I got to Germany, it was like I had come home. I come from a German family. My great-grandparents were from the old country, as it were. And there was a lot of German spoken and food in our family, and I just fell in love with the country. And then after a little while, folks that I got to know would say, "Oh, I read Karl May books. They're the Westerns. They wanted to know all about the West." And Karl May, and I looked at them and I said, "Who?" And so we discovered that Karl May books, and interestingly enough, Karl May never left Germany. So the fun started there, and that was fun that you introduced that. Living in Germany was a wonderful experience. I was there for nearly 5 years. First in the Army, and then in Schweinfurt, and then I moved and did time at the university in Würzburg, and lived in Würzburg and some little towns outside of it, and loved my experience in Germany. In fact, my son was born there, and we didn't teach him English until he was 5. So it was a broad, lifting and extraordinary experience for me, and I've stayed very connected to Germany.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this, sometimes you even write German sentences, practice your German. So
I do, I do, and you're both very kind that you don't criticize.
No, I would never criticize. I also don't want people to pick on me and my language skills. So it's not my place to say.
Well, but it's very nice. Thank you for letting me practice. So, but working in some companies in Germany, that didn't happen while I was there. It sort of happened much later, after I had completed graduate school and made different connections, and folks read articles that I had written, and I was fortunate enough to have a project with SKF and Kugelfischer and some other firms in Italy and so on. And it's interesting that working internationally, the way our partners, Marty, Nathan, and I, and others of our partners do, is very interesting. You have to be very careful not to export the sort of Western view, the American view of how things should be, And in fact, 20 years or so ago, I built an assessment called the Culture Shock Test, and it was designed specifically for assessing and being able to unfreeze American executives who were being prepared to work, outside of the culture of the country. And it's very interesting. The issues of effectiveness, the issues of output and outcomes, and how we get to that spot is sort of culturally agnostic. But the cultural assumptions that go into moving a company from, their habits, what they've kind of done forever, into a mode where they think about what the output is, what's the result, what's the reason for why I'm doing this, is very interesting. But human beings are what they are, and people work, to build their lives, but they also work in a company in order to make a profit, which sustains a lot of things. So it's an interesting process, very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, and I have some interesting questions and also insights into the output organization. Um, but let's stay in Germany, or let's transition over from Germany to the US. And
Okay.
maybe this is just a nice transition for me. I'm asking the question, but maybe there's actually a connection from Karl May books, which talks about the West, about the cowboys meeting the Indians, helping them out, and you working for Native American tribes. So how did that come about? Is there a connection, or is that just a nice transition?
It's all of the above. It's a nice transition. Interestingly enough, while I was in graduate school in upstate New York, we got involved in a project with the Seneca Nation in southern New York State to actually help them start their first Head Start program for their schools, for the children. And so I've always been involved with indigenous folks, indigenous challenges, if you will, around the world, really. And then fast forward many years later, a colleague of mine who used to be a partner worked extensively as a senior executive in gaming, and through him is how I met Artie Nathan, my partner, but also how we got our first Native American project. And most of those are built around their gaming operations and the training of leadership and management and their councils and that sort of thing. And, there's two reasons why people open a business. One is because they know how to do something, so the person on the corner who changes your tires, changed tires for somebody else and then decided he could open up his own shop. Or because you can. And a lot of the native tribes opened casinos because they could, but they misunderstood the idea that they would know how to manage them and develop them and grow them past a certain point. And so 10 or 15 years ago, we got very involved in that process of helping tribes and their management to develop their organizations, their casinos, and their hospitality into something that was self-sustainable and that they knew how to manage and develop in the long term. And so that's been a very interesting process and taught us a lot. But the ideas that we have fostered and built throughout our careers and our professions about effectiveness, about outputs, about the skills of effective communication and multiculturalism and coaching and so on, which all go into that, all apply in that environment as well. All this stuff applies wherever you go. It's what's different is the culture that you're doing it within. So you have to deal with and adapt to and respect that culture in order to get your ideas across.
So are you saying national culture has no effect on the outcome of your tests, or do you also need to incorporate different biases, especially, let's say, international biases in conducting tests?
Well, there's an interesting issue, is that the nature of our practice and our sort of approach and belief system is rather more scientific in a way, so that we build our assessments and our tools and our tests to be as culture free as possible. We try to be culturally agnostic, and so for the most part, we don't worry about the culture because the tests have been and assessments have already been validated, often within the context of that culture. So for example, our management position analysis test was validated using managers from 7 different countries over a period of 7-8 years to develop it. So we tend not to run into cultural artifacts with the primary assessments that we use. We've tried to think ahead of that problem. And the issues of effectiveness are culturally agnostic. It doesn't matter where you are. The purpose of what you're doing is to produce some kind of a measurable effect. And that's an issue that a lot of companies, certainly a lot of individuals, lose sight of very often.
Yeah. Along cultural differences, Lily's asking a question. Can science overcome cultural differences?
Well, Lily, have you got enough time? That's a very interesting question. The attempt to understand the essence, if you will, of a particular culture and its artifice, the psychological drivers. In many ways, I'm trained as a social anthropologist and as a clinical psychologist. But if you ask me what it was, how I viewed myself, I would probably say as an organizational sociologist. You look at the complete aspect of an organization and the environment within which it lives, and then try to apply a scientific approach to the achievement of insights, sort of into the data that you're trying to discover or respond to. So science is a double-edged sword. Lots of people bumble into a culture, bumble into a situation, and try to make using scientific method, but they try to make the outcome fit their assumptions. And our job is really to go the other way, is what is it we're looking for? What is it we would like to understand? And then proceed along that path with an awful lot of checks and balances in it, if you will.
Okay, and the more, let's say, bias-free it is concerning cultures or various aspects, the more I suppose you can actually focus really on the organization and also make it maybe like compare it to other companies or even other industries.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. If you do it well and your data is solid and you make sure that you validate your data, et cetera, it's easy to compare a company in Germany to one in the US to one in China. There is a cultural artifice that influences those companies, how they think, how they organize themselves, and so on. But at the end of the day, we're in business or in some activity in order to create an outcome, and sometimes it's a profit, sometimes it's a change in the world. It doesn't matter. But in all cases, the company needs to begin with the end in mind. Where am I now? Where do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? And that means organizing the strategy and the focus of the organization, its story about itself, the nature of the positions and the job structure, and something very basic, which Artie and I have never really gotten a positive answer to. So it means it's a good question. I would suggest anybody go out to find the first person on your shop floor, your business floor, your gaming floor, wherever you are, and ask them a simple question. How would you know at the end of the year that you had been effective? And then wait. And I promise you that 99, 44, 100% of the time, the person will give you an answer, but it isn't the answer that's needed. So if a person, individual, and subsequently the unit that they're working in, and then the company that all of those units make up, don't know the answer to that question, they're going to leave a lot of money and a lot of effort on the table because they're just gaggling around, kind of repeating what they did last year or what somebody else taught them. But when a person knows what the output is supposed to be, what is it, how's it going to be measured, and by when does it have to be delivered, and they've had a hand in setting that, it changes the culture of the organization on the spot almost, and it changes the outcomes profoundly. It's a very important issue that more companies and more individuals need to think about.
Yeah, and I must really admit that you also opened my mind, or maybe it was just you helped me just connect the dots, and really that you are combining the academic part of research and scientific proven methods, but also applying it in business. Because I feel there's so much bashing going on. So one area I'm assuming to be superior to others, people, going into companies, saying, okay, all I need is business practice. Entrepreneurs, you're supposed to be self-taught, but really you're one of the few people last year who really emphasized also it is good to have an academic background and it can go hand in hand. And I love the example about you also saying, well, just look at the doctor's practice.
That's
so
right.
Any medicine man we meet today, we expect him or her to be, let's say, fluent in both areas, so academia and the practical part.
That's exactly right, and you got to be very careful as an individual who runs an organization or a department or a division. You want to avoid the flavor of the month ideas. What you end up doing is confusing the heck out of the company. All sorts of things and subject matters are very useful and effective in a company, but they have to be applied correctly and in the right order. And rather than, well, let's do time management. That'll change everything. Or let's do total quality management. That'll change everything. Those are very, very good things. But the context of the company needs to be built around a culture of effectiveness. What's the outcome? What are we in business for? What's my position? What's it supposed to produce? And we run into it. It starts right at the beginning. If I don't know what a job is supposed to produce specifically, measurably, how in the world do I hire effectively for that position?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so on and so forth. And so it starts there, and it goes all the way through the cycle of the business or whatever activity it is. You go to the doc. If you bring up the medical model, if you went to the doctors and said, "Oh, my shoulder hurts," and the doctor said, "Well, let's do this," you'd walk out of the office, wouldn't you? Right? Because you didn't do any diagnosis. He didn't understand what the real problem was. Or worse, if you went in and told the doctor what he should do to fix your shoulder, he should walk out of the room, right? Because in any organizational structural change and development, there has to be a diagnosis first. What's really going on here? And in effect, you take in what the patient says, the owner of the company, the owner, the manager, what they say, but you don't follow it literally. You take it in as a piece of information, and then you have to have the methodology and the toolkit to actually diagnose the organization to see what is actually going on before you then proceed to provide some sort of developmental process for it. And that's what's missing a lot of the time.
Mm. And are you convinced, just as compared to, let's say, really medical practice, where the doctor comes into a room, sees a patient, and then there's this, steps probably going through his or her head of what to ask, what to do, what to touch, what to feel, where to cut. Is
That's
that
right.
also really applicable to businesses? And if yes, are we there yet, or do we need another decade, more research, or more practical, or both sides working closer together? What is your experience?
Well, kind of all of the above, but a good practitioner of any sort in any field kind of knows pretty quickly what's going on if they have had some depth of experience, because there's only so many ways that a problem presents itself. Every time it's not unique. What's unique about it is it's a common problem with a unique organization, and so there's always a bit of a sensibility that has to go into that intuition, because you kind of know. But just because you know, you can't really tell the client that, because they think you're crazy. They're in a completely different place, right? And having with a completely different dilemma in their mind. And so building trust, building rapport, doing measurable and validatable diagnosis, and then building the rapport with the client is critically important. We're always learning. My gosh, the moment you stop learning, you stop being relevant, frankly. And in this case, every time we see a client, every time we engage in some sort of a project, we learn a great deal. And so the client teaches us very often as much as we hopefully are able to teach them, and create whatever change is required and necessary. Our job, any good change agent's job, is really to work themselves out of a job. And that sounds very odd, but in the end of the day, you're supposed to leave behind reproducible skill sets, toolkits, so that they don't have to depend upon you anymore. And you have to be very careful about that in the trade that we're in.
But do you go out and, are you telling your customers, all the wisdom is within you, you don't need me at the end? Or do they then say, okay, so why should I hire you in the first place if I will get there eventually myself?
Well, there's the rub is, if they knew how to get there themselves, they would already be there. And so, like all of us, there are mysteries in front of us, roadblocks, things that we get stuck on. And so we will often tell them our job, as we do this project with you, is to leave behind the skills and the knowledge and the abilities so that you eventually don't need us, or maybe you want us for something else, right? But we do not want to build dependency with the client, right? So you've got a lot of work to do, client. We've got a lot of work to do. Let's do this together. It's going to take a certain amount of time. This is what we're going to do. But at the other end, Our job is to be able to go away and you can continue on in this new place that you're in with the new skills. Maybe it's strategic planning. Maybe it's annual performance planning. Maybe it's a revised hiring protocol. A lot of things, there's a lot of issues that go on, but at the end of the day, we don't mind telling them that we're going to work ourselves out of a job. That actually helps build trust. Right? That helps build trust.
Absolutely. We have a comment from Fatih saying that she thinks it's a really interesting insights we're sharing. And I'd like to take this opportunity also to encourage our viewers, our audience on LinkedIn and YouTube. This can be super interactive. I do not need to be the only one asking questions. So if there's anything that you can take out of this call or that you've been wanting to ask for ages, feel free to comment. I can see all comments, we can share them, and then of course we can discuss them. And that's the beauty of this format. It's interactive and it is live. And we and especially Don can be approached. So hit the keys. I'll give you a few more seconds. I'm just asking the next question, but as I said, feel free.
Feel free.
Yeah, and I hope that's okay with you, right, Don? So
absolutely. That's why I'm here.
Perfectly. I'd like to quote you. It's probably somewhere also in the book, but doing research for this talk, I found it in one of your many essays you wrote. And it goes like this, and this is right hitting the area of outputs and results. You supposedly, no, I think you actually did say, too many managers measure their responsibilities by functions that are actually inputs rather than outputs. Outputs are the only true measure of effective management. And for those of you who that might sound be like still a bit too academic, we've also put it quite simple. So take a job description where it says the job of the new hiree will be planning, organizing, controlling, delegating, staffing. These are good indicators for input criteria. And to make it even more simple or more relevant, you also give the example of a schoolboy that at the end of the year comes home, hands over the report, and the report goes like this. He excels in initiative, in group interactions, and responsiveness, but unfortunately, he cannot read or write.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge, right? And the difference between inputs and outputs.
That's right. Inputs are the activities that are required of any position, of any job, of any task, right? An input is raking the leaves in your yard. Well, what's the output? A clean yard, no leaves in the yard. There's some questions that I will often ask is, what's the difference? Here's the difference between an input and an output. Machine maintenance or machine availability. Right? So the question then is, why do you maintain the machines? Well, so that they're available. Okay, so that's your output, right? And that helps you plan all sorts of your approaches to the maintenance process. 10,000 acres planted in wheat. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? But the real objective might be something like X bushels of wheat yield per year, right? That's really what you're aiming at. And with that target, it influences how you think about and plan for and manage the inputs, right? And so if you look at, I kind of make a joke that if you look at most of the job descriptions that most companies have in their HR department, excuse me, Artie, they'll say all the things you just read off. He will come in the morning and turn on the lights and smile and know how to use Microsoft Word and whatever the hell else is there, right? But what's it supposed to produce? And so I tell people, I suggest with a grin that they should, burn the job description. But if they're a little nervous about that, get a Xerox of it and burn that. So that they can begin to think about, well, wait a minute, what's this job supposed to produce? All right. And if we don't know what that is, we can't possibly hire the right person. And we certainly can't indoctrinate them into the new job and manage them. properly so that they can achieve those outputs. So it's a very critical, simple, but a very critical area.
Yeah, and not just in hiring. You also mentioned that, especially if there's tension or you have the feeling that there may be one or two jobs that are kind of, could be redundant because there are
Uh-huh.
overlaps, but how
Yeah,
can you diagnose them if
yeah,
you
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
written it down and analyzed it?
Well, and it's very common for a rapidly growing firm
Mm,
to hire willy nilly. Department head A says, I need a new X. Department head B says, I need a new X. And there's no criterion for the proper structure and
mm,
design of that organization. We did a major project with a very large banking system in Canada, headquartered in Toronto about 20 years ago or so. And in the process of doing the effectiveness change process in the organization, 200 middle managers came to the CEO and their team and our team and said, 200 people, and said, we don't think we have a job. And they didn't. So as you tighten down, right, and look
mm,
at the outputs for every position and the linkages, right,
mm,
these 200 people said, we don't have a job. So to the undying credit of that company, over 6 months, they found new jobs at or above the position
mm,
the people were already at in the
mm,
organization or outplaced them, but they all benefited by going up. Uh, it was a very responsible and ethical company,
mm.
and so that's part of the process. They realized and took responsibility for the fact that they didn't have a
Mm,
structure that allowed for them to figure out what the right size of the organization was.
mm. It sounds so simple listening to you, but reading your material, I also well, I could also be guilty of thinking more in inputs instead of outputs. Do you have an
Okay.
explanation why we or companies tend to write down what you're supposed to do, not what you're supposed to have as a result?
Um, it, it's funny. Most people know how to do this by nature. When's the last time you went on a vacation and didn't know where you were going? Right?
Planned out every single minute.
And then, I'm going to Mazatlan in Mexico. And so, time of year, clothing, shots, tickets, everything, passport, you planned it all backwards from there from the time you were going to leave. So it was
Mm,
already done, right? But I dare you to go on a vacation without knowing where you're going to go. You'll end up mowing the lawn for a week, you know, right? We know how to do this. Why do you wash your clothes on the weekend?
mm,
Because you want to wash clothes or because you want clean clothes that you have access to, right?
mm, mm,
So we think we're having a dinner party. Uh, 8 friends used to be anyway in the old days. When we weren't locked down, 8 friends are coming for dinner on Sunday night at 6 o'clock. Well, what am I going to have? It has to be ready and hot at 6 o'clock on the table. And I've got to figure out what the menu is. I have to figure out where I'm going to shop, what I have to do, what the order of things are. All of those are the activities
mm,
designed to achieve the dinner at 6 o'clock with 8 people
mm,
around the table.
mm,
We already know how to do this. So
mm,
why do we get into the question really is why do we get into a company and forget all of that? Because we get busy. Because we
mm,
get busy, and simply stated, a fellow who works for the utility department and digs ditches for the town all day long works just as hard as the person who runs a company.
mm,
Which one of them achieves more in the long run? Has more greater responsibility. Both jobs are equally valuable. People are equally valuable, but the job
mm,
has a different set of responsibilities. How do I organize my day? It has to
mm,
do with what I need to achieve by the end of the month.
mm,
And it's just companies are busy. They've got challenges left, right, and up the middle, interruptions all the time. And people without a system of saying, here's where I'm headed, don't even have the opportunity to say, no, I can't do that. You know, so
mm.
it's kind of a chaotic mechanism that sooner or later produces a profit, but not nearly as much as it could.
Hmm. And so this is where you then come in with your company and your
Yeah,
your assignments, your
yeah,
trainings.
hmm yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. Uh, And every kind of client that we have had the privilege of working with over so many years has been a referral or someone reading something that we've written. And it has always been about the first a diagnosis, then a treatment plan, and then the process. And that seems to work pretty well. And all of our work, all of our writing, all of our instruments, all of our publications are kind of built around that central hub of why am I doing this? What's the output need to be?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic, which is also confirmed by Michelle joining us from Canada, saying that she's finding this a very interesting discussion. And if you do have questions, feel free to ask them.
Yeah. Let's have the questions.
Absolutely. So yeah, really, really interesting topic about outputs and thinking about it. All the time now myself, wanting to build up a new web page. Yeah. So the input would be maybe 9 colors. The output is, well, does it convert? Does it answer my potential customers' questions?
Right. I mean, at the heart of it, a manager's job is to be effective. No one disagrees with that. We hire a manager or supervisor to be effective. Effectiveness means in our world, it means that you meet the output requirements of the situation. And so what are those? And then how do we arrange our approach to that? Yeah.
Quite simple.
Yeah.
There's another interesting topic, and I think I only know half the story. I'm kind of joining on a weekly basis in the Tiny Classroom trainings when we are live on different channels. But tell the audience, like, what did how did you come up with it? Like, was it a Corona emergency plan, and what is it specifically? Because I think you're really onto something, so let's share it with the world.
Okay, well, the story is more fun than that. That for a number of years now, my partner and friend Artie Nathan, when we would have meetings together, our board would say, "We got to do Don in the box," and I used to laugh at that and say, "What in the heck is that?" I didn't get it. He'd say, "We got to put Don in a box," and for a while I thought he was pulling my leg. And time went on, and then we started to talk about it about a year and a half ago, and began to produce what are turning out to be for the Tiny Classroom training series, turning out to be 1 hour classes inside of a series of 5 courses that are designed to be presented online, so that folks can view them on their computer or on their iPad or on their phone. And they're directed and aimed specifically at supervisors and middle managers, and they're coming out very, very nicely. We're about to launch the trial run for one of the courses, but we've been doing since the pandemic, sort of driven by the idea of tiny classrooms, a response to the pandemic of these tiny classroom training live things that we do most days. And so I think we've produced about 120 of them, and they're, you've been part of them a great deal, and they're 3 to 5 to 8 minutes long on a particular subject. And we press them out through LinkedIn and Facebook and other things like that. And they're a lot of fun to do, but we've been focusing on management adaptations, if you will, that have been influenced by the pandemic to try to help folks feel better about it, learn some skills, and adapt to the altered demands of having to work remotely. So it started out as an idea that we were having fun with and enjoyed, and then it's turned into a big production of 120 of them so far, and we've had a lot of fun doing them, and particularly now on Monday mornings or Tuesday mornings with you and Lily. Great fun.
Yeah. Thank you. That's always a great fun. And I especially like the combination of, first of all, that we got over the pandemic topics, which were certainly helpful, and also getting an international perspective, like we from the US and you from Germany, but that we also transitioned over in current management and academic topics, merging them. So it is always great fun, and I think everyone who's interested in learning more about it, as Don, you said, it's all over Facebook, LinkedIn,
Right.
and YouTube. You have a YouTube channel. We've integrated all our series in our Malish YouTube
Uh-huh.
channel.
Good.
But that is only leading up to the courses, which are going to be live any minute now, right?
There, we're about to launch the what we're calling the sneak peek for our first introduction and our first course, um, Learning to Lead, which is aimed at supervisors and sort of addresses the other courses that are in that series on leadership and effectiveness. And so that we're looking to launch the entire process, this first series of courses, sometime within the next 2 months or so. But the trial run is going out to make sure that our clients like it, and maybe get some productive comments back from them. But so far, we've gotten very, very, very positive responses from potential clients and folks who have seen the work. So it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun, but hopefully it really addresses a marketplace that is absolutely needed. We see very, very frequently in our client organizations that people who are in that first line supervision ranks and even in the sort of first line management ranks, they get promoted because they did a good job at whatever it was they were doing, the tasks that they were doing, and so they get promoted to supervisor. And I make a joke that you're now going to be a supervisor, Jane or John, and you go, oh my goodness, that's wonderful for about 30 seconds, and then they realize that they haven't got a clue how to be a supervisor. They've got no training, nothing, and what they've learned about being a supervisor is often from somebody who themselves never learned how to be a supervisor. And so the purpose of this is really to directly head on address that issue. Here is a cost-effective, straightforward way for your new line supervisors and your middle managers to learn the basic skills and competencies, the soft skills of being an effective manager and a leader. And so we think that there's a wide open market for that, and we've been very careful to make sure that it's very cost effective and very impactful. So it comes with support materials, manuals, some personal assessments that a person can take, reading materials, and once a month we'll be having a webinar, sort of a giant webinar for anyone who's taken the course to participate in, to say, I got a question, or to meet and compare notes with other folks, which really promises to be a lot of fun, but also a nice way to network people so that they can learn from others. So we're pretty excited about it.
Absolutely. And I think a great target market, but I'm sure you also have it in mind, is not every company is really, let's say, hopefully not yet, but will eventually turn into a company where they foster lifelong learning, where they encourage people to learn, where they free up budget for people to take those courses.
That's right.
But anyone who's thrown into a leadership position and needs assistance and just think, okay, well, I need to do something for myself, even if my employer is not investing, they could still go and check out your courses. And because at the end of the day, they want to be good managers.
That's right.
And then only, secondly, they think, okay, who's going to pay for it? So,
oh my God, and that's absolutely right. We're initially marketing, obviously, to companies, but there's certainly the ability of an individual who hears about it to sign on themselves and take the courses, or to get some coaching. And so behind it is Artie and I and others in our firm do a great deal of personalized and developmental coaching, really around the world, and especially during the pandemic, we've done an awful lot of it, and it's proving to be a very effective thing. So there's a lot of support activity and resources built around the tiny classroom training as well, so it doesn't just sit there all by itself. Yeah.
Cool.
And,
I'm super excited, to see. Be hopefully among the first who get the access, who can check it out, and spread the word.
That's right. And we get along down the road, and you and Lily will be part of that. So
that would be a pleasure.
It'd be a lot of fun. It'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
So Don, we've been talking for 45 minutes, and there's probably still so much input, but also we don't want to give it all away. It's at least here it's the evening. Here you're heading into lunch break. So where can people reach you? So of course they can check out your company page, but would you like them to add you on LinkedIn, or what's a nice way to get in
Uh,
contact with you if they're
uh,
interested to learn more about you and your services?
yeah, look us up, Artie and I, up on Artie Nathan and I on LinkedIn. And feel free to use the email address. It'd be info at sdwnet.com to get a hold of us. Uh,
Mhm.
and and I think LinkedIn, we've got an awful lot, a very large following on LinkedIn, which is really a pleasure. Uh, so those are probably the two best ways to get a hold of us.
Mm. It's definitely a great place to be, where you'll find
Hmm.
all of
Yeah,
us. And if you've liked this talk, and also are not connected yet, please also reach out to me. I
yeah.
always love connecting people, especially from all over the world. And yeah, maybe one day meet up in person. This
Oh,
is our big plan to also either fly over to the US or invite
that's
you
abs-
to Germany. I know we have some little things that we could kind of encourage you to fly over for. So
it
hopefully
wouldn't
it
it
will
would
work.
yeah, it wouldn't take much of a nudge, to get me to fly over there to see you all. I haven't been on an airplane in almost a year, and a couple of years ago I flew 170,000 miles in 1 year, and now I haven't been on a plane at all. I'm having withdrawal.
Yeah, well, not only the flights, not only foreign countries, so
Yeah,
many other
yeah,
things
that's
in
right.
business, but also private. But I think we're strong, we're hanging in there,
Yes,
and
we are.
our talks are going to continue. So my LinkedIn lives and your tiny classroom, the
Hmm.
trainings. So there's always hope, and there's always good reason to connect and think of the future, because there's going to be a future, and it's
That's
going to be
right.
bright. And for companies, I think that's really a main question. And also, let's leave with Lily's nice comment, really saying about input output question is the one question everyone should ask himself or herself before making a decision to found a
Hmm.
company, to hire a new staff, to work on a new homepage, even to do a LinkedIn live. So, what is
That's
really
right.
the end result that you want to achieve with that? And that is
That's
really
right.
applicable for like personal life and also the business life. And this is really,
That's right.
I think this is what you are going to leave me with for now and forever. Really focusing on the idea of
That's
and
absolutely right. And so feel free to reach out, ask questions. You got my email address, and I'm happy to exchange with you in any way that you'd like. This is the business we're in, and what we enjoy most is exchanging our ideas and thoughts with people. So, and for everyone who was on this call, thank you very much, and Lily and Mikey, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
well, we appreciate you having here and agreeing to this call, and
Mhm.
looking forward.
Good. All right.
So everyone who's been watching, thank you. It was great having you. And I'm live next week again. It's the same time. It's going to be a German talk for a change. But I can also invite you to Lily's talk, which is tomorrow at the same time, of course, on her channel. And she's going to talk about cold calling, picking up the phone. Is it a good
Ooh,
way? What are you supposed to say? So also check out her LinkedIn live tomorrow evening or
wonderful.
morning in the US.
I'm sure it'll be wonderful.
So goodbye for now. Have a wonderful time and see you again soon.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.